Welcome to another episode of the Mr. Therapist and the Counselor podcast, a podcast where we have authentic conversations and we talk about some real shit. Jesse O.
Today on the podcast, Steven Brewer, LMFT. Let's go.
Steven, welcome to the show, man.
What's up, man? How's it going?
Good. How was the drive? You're driving from
Chino Hills.
Chino Hills, right? Down to San Clemente?
Yeah, it's not bad, man. It wasn't bad at all. I got fast track, so I got here pretty quickly without any
you
traffic.
feel the ocean breeze here? You feel the ocean breeze a little
it's
more?
way better.
Yeah.
15 degrees cooler, probably. So.
But you don't come down here, like there would be no reason for you to come down to South Orange.
Not really, yeah. I don't spend a whole lot of time down here in this area. I did have family that lived down here years ago, but that was the last time I was probably up here.
Well, I just want to let everybody know that I'm wearing a Justin Herbert Chargers jersey.
It's going to be a good year or what?
It's going to be a great year.
Is it?
The reason why...
calling the police right now.
Actually, Justin Herbert did just rob the bank. He just backed up the Brinks truck and got about $250 million.
Did he?
Yeah.
Over like 5 years. That's crazy,
dude. You should talk about you met Herbert at...
Oh, yeah. Did you know? I didn't. So what's your team, first of all? Because you didn't approve of my message there.
I like the Rams.
He just paused, dude. He just froze straight up right
but,
now.
hey, look.
Hold on a second, dude.
Look, I like the Rams.
We should have established this before we had you on the show.
Look, I like the Rams because when I grew up, I liked the LA Rams. And then when I lived in Missouri, I grew up in Missouri as well. So when I moved there, like a year later, they moved there.
I have respect for that. You didn't jump the bandwagon.
I liked them since like Jim Everett was QB and Henry Ellard was the wide receiver.
I respect for that.
Jim Everett going after Jim Rome.
Yeah, remember that? That was awesome. Say it again. Call me that again.
Yeah, that was. Are you familiar with the area here?
A little bit.
So I was up in Lake Forest. They opened up a board and brew there, and we were there with the family. And I look up and I see Justin Herbert. Like he's sitting there with two of his buddies.
Nice.
And I'm like just literally it looks like three dudes just hanging out talking about, I don't know, World of Warcraft or something. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, that's Justin Herbert.
Wait, for reals? What are they talking about?
No, it looked like,
dude, is he really into
No, it looked like they were just
awesome.
three nerds. I'm sorry, Justin. I don't think you're a nerd.
Damn, bro.
I was judging that.
You're wearing his jersey and you're shooting
I
straight
love you.
shots.
It was past life. I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to become a better person. I don't want to be so judgmental. but I look up and I see like from the ear back, and I'm like, that's Justin Herbert. My wife's like, you're crazy. That's not, like, how do you know? I'm like, I can look at his ear. I know it's Justin. And it was him. Awesome. I got a picture with him.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, me and my girl went. My 5-year-old girl went up there. She loves Justin. Mm-hmm. And I was like, say hi to him, and she was starstruck. And he was on the spot. He's like, maybe next time. Yeah.
Hey, well, you know what, dude? I'll tell you what. I'm never gonna question your fandom again because you can identify your favorite player by his ear.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So that's amazing.
Yeah. So, Justin, if you're hearing this, you got a nice ear, buddy.
And I'll tell you what, Dave Bautista, if you're listening at any point in time, I could recognize you by any body part as well. I'm just going to leave it at that.
We're going to have to hit the explicit button on this episode.
I don't know, man. I could vouch for that. This guy's Dave.
Super Dave
huge fan.
Yeah, I love that man. So
yeah,
no matter what color he's wearing, I told you.
I'll tell you what, I didn't realize how big of a fan you were, even though you bought the doll and brought it here.
Bro, for the last time with the doll, dude. Jeez, my knees. This ain't The Conjuring, man. Like, it's not like a doll. It's an action figure.
Oh, yeah.
Action figure.
You sound like 40-year-old virgin right now.
Well,
maybe I am. So Steven, it's really like I'm super stoked that you came down here. I've known Steven for a while. We lived in Victorville, California, which I love to bring up on the podcast occasionally because I want to show you how hard I am and how difficult my life was at one point in time. But we go back.
That's the benchmark, Victorville. Dude, so.
That's it. So if you got through that, you're gonna be all right. Yeah. So, but we brought you on, and anytime we bring anybody here on the show, we always we want to know why. What got you? What interests you in becoming a therapist? Why do you do this?
You're a licensed marriage and family therapist.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head when you said like about Victorville and growing up a little bit hard, and having some difficult things. childhood wasn't that great, but I mean, it wasn't the worst either, but I did have some stuff that impacted me. And just knowing, I've always had like that interest in psychology. And so kind of before I even went to school for it or anything, kind of piecing together certain behaviors of myself that I had, and noticing like, oh, hey, they say this is because of this. And then just kind of taking all the pieces of the puzzle for myself before I even went to grad school and all that. Just kind of looking at that and saying like, hey, this is why I do things. And I was like, hey, maybe this is why a lot of people do things.
Yeah.
And then I was like, it shifted from like, hey, I know how bad I felt when I went through those things, so I want to help people that are going through those things,
That's awesome,
so
man.
it just kind of shifted from an interest and more of a trying to figure myself out kind of thing to like, hey, it sucked feeling like that for me. Like it was horrible. So like, I want to help people to get through that and guide them through that.
That's cool, man. Did you know, when would you think like you were aware of like your intentions to want to study psychology a little bit more? Was it like,
I'll be honest, man, it's a little bit later in life. It was more like a hobby for me. Just, I wanted to just figure brains out, and that's it, dude. Like I was like, personalities, brains, why do people do things? My wife, she always laughs, but then she's also like, that's kind of weird, because I tell her like one of the most prominent things that brought me into wanting to learn about people was serial killers. Like just figuring out like, hey, how come like these 1% of the population of people just go batshit, and do horrific things, and then there's another person that's like ends up being the president of the United States or whatever, and then they're like, they grew up the same way, they had trauma in their childhood, but then one went on to be like, a leader or somebody, and then the other person went to be, a really infamous, horrible figure in history, so serial killers first, and then after that it was like, hey,
that's cool though. You had the curiosity to
I'm curious though, like growing up, I'm a little bit older than you, but like, do you remember initially, like even like, it's just because you brought up like a serial killer that like kind of caught your eye and was like, hey, I'm like, the curiosity's there, or was it much like, or like you said, it was later in life you kind of got more interested in it?
I remember hearing about Jeffrey Dahmer. That was I knew about other ones because I've always been like a history kind of nerd too. So I knew about like Ted Bundy and all them. But at that time, like I was kind of like reading about history and I was a little bit too young at that moment. But with Jeffrey Dahmer, that's when like it was on the news. Like I don't remember hearing about Ted Bundy on the news, but Jeffrey Dahmer was like, boom, all the time. So that was like the very first time when I was all like, he did what?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, like why would they do that? And then just kind of escalated from there into like, now I know I'm a psychologist. So
yeah. Well, just kind of interested in like your early life a little bit. Like what was upbringing? Like you said, it was rough. Like I don't know if you were raised with like both parents. How did they feel about like school and just like what, I don't know if you got some influences with like kind of, I don't know, maybe worse, I don't know, bad people or like gangsters or like
well, definitely. Like Victorville isn't as bad as like, hey, I grew up in Compton, or anything like that, but there's some bad areas of Victorville, even in the 80s and 90s, now it's pretty rough, but I grew up in one of the bad areas, in Victorville, that exposed to a lot of things when I was a kid, like drugs, sex, like not personally, but like other people talking about it, I'm listening to NWA and High C when I was like 7 and 8 years old, talking about bitch better have my money and all this, and I'm like 8 on the basketball court, like singing that. And I don't even know what it is, but it sounds cool, so like I was exposed to a lot of that stuff growing up because of the area I grew up in, and I lived in. So, and then just like on a personal level, like my dad, initially we didn't have the best relationship, when I was a kid, just because he was battling alcoholism. He's been sober for how old am I? Maybe like 30 years now,
Oh, wow.
So he kicked it. Yeah, he beat it and he kicked it, and he's been good, but initially, it was rough, and that's kind of where a lot of that came in, because it was a lot of times it was just my mom and I and my older half sister, so like, but she was like way older. She was already like a teen when I was like, like a kid, so we couldn't be further apart as far as like, like I'm over here playing with the X-Men and then she's all like talking on the phone to boys and, going to parties and stuff like that. So it was usually just my mom and I, growing up, and then my dad would be in there sporadically, but then, after that difficulty and kind of, this sounds cliche, but being raised on the streets, like I said, I learned all about all that stuff from the streets instead of my parents, and then so that kind of like, I mean, it was good that I learned it, but it was bad where I learned it from and how I learned it. So that's what kind of impacted me and impacted some of my future behaviors and not to get too clinical, but like relational patterns and stuff like that.
Get clinical with it, man. That's what you do.
I'm connecting a lot with the story just because I grew up in Oceanside, and it's not like Oceanside isn't known to be like super crazy, but there's difference in San Clemente. There's like there's influences, you can get lost in like gangs and stuff like that. My parents never they were always very careful with me to like make sure I'm not hanging out with people who would influence me negatively, but it was really easy. You get exposed to like drugs and you get invited to parties, and it's like, hey, what's meth? Like, we have some meth for you. It's like, holy shit. Like, at middle school level, knowing kids who are like doing drugs that are that heavy, it's kind of crazy. And did your mom like, what was her take on like school at that time? Did she expect you to like pursue a higher education, or was that like, I know my parents, like they always wanted that for me. They never, maybe they didn't, at some point they didn't know if I was going to make it that far because I wasn't the brightest kid, but they were always pushing that on me. And I think that made a difference for me to like not get involved into like bad crowds. But I don't know if that was the same for you or.
No, I mean, not that they like, my mom wasn't like, proud that I eventually went that route or anything, but like I never really had that pressure. Thankfully, because I know the type of personality I have, thankfully my mom was really like, she was present and she was there and she was a great mom, but she also gave me my space because I kind of, sometimes I think a little bit differently than a lot of other people. So that flourished when I was a kid. Like it was like I didn't pay attention in class, didn't listen to the teacher, didn't do anything. I was reading comics, drawing comic books, writing stories, not even listening. But the teachers couldn't get mad at me because when I took the test at the end of the day or at the end of the week, like it was like, okay, he only missed one.
Oh, dang.
And I thought he wasn't paying attention, but he was,
Wow.
And I kind of was, but then sometimes I wasn't because I was all into Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man at that time. So I'm like reading every.
You're smart though, like you retained information.
Yeah, yeah. It's just like just being able to hear it. I've always had that knack where like I can be talking to you, but then I can hear something else and I could retain it and then like remember it and say like, hey, I remember when you said this, and they're like, you weren't even looking at me.
This guy is a motherfucking superhero.
I don't know. Maybe it
makes you a good therapist. I'm sure, dude.
No, yeah, for sure.
That's really cool.
Well, because a lot of times the clients think that I'm not, they think that I'm not picking up on certain things, or they, you know how it is. Sometimes when we're working with our clients, they try to be slick sometimes with stuff and like, not say something, but you can tell they're trying to say something, so I'm all like, yeah, I saw that, in my head. I'm like, you don't think I'm gonna pay attention, but I saw that. You just thought you distracted me with this.
You had this twitch in your eye when you said that.
No, seriously, like little stuff like that. Like, hey, I noticed your eyes got really big when you mentioned this, and they're like, what? Like, the hell?
You gave it away real quick.
Yeah.
Hey, it's really cool that like I've known Steven for a while, and like it was really just cool to hear like your background and just with your upbringing, and like I guess like when we go to like Gorilla Mall or we're going to like punk rock shows, we don't really sit down there and be like, hey, you want to talk about like how our fathers went around? Like we just don't do that, but like you find the more commonalities, and I think that's probably a big part of like why when people do come together, if it's working in the field or even clients, you'll see connections when you didn't realize they were there initially. I did, just because we went into it for a minute, I was like, man, I don't want to go in this direction, but fuck, it's our podcast, right? No, but like the whole, I was curious about like, you brought up Dahmer. It made me think about like growing up. I grew up in Fontana. I remember I was the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez. And like growing up as a kid, I think around the same time too, like Freddy Krueger was really prominent, but like they used to call Richard Ramirez was kind of like the real life boogeyman. I remember like being very scared of that concept of like, that was like the very first time I felt very unsafe as a kid growing up. And And I didn't have this huge fascination with serial killers. I mean, there was an interest of like, I guess the question I'm trying to get to is with you is that like through your, what you've looked at, like, do you think that some people are truly like evil? It's kind of a deep question there.
Wow.
Damn.
Wow. Nice.
No,
That's
because
a good one.
I want to ask this too. I want to bring this up because like I've thought about, I think about good and bad a lot. And a lot of times I work with clients and they initially sometimes think they're bad or they're evil. I remember this client, he was 21 years old. And his thought and belief was based on his upbringing. His parents said he was an evil child. And I remember how much that broke him down. And unfortunately, there was never a recovery with him because he passed away at like 22 or 23.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember there was this real battle because of distortion was I am this way. So yeah, just I kind of like your take on that, of the idea of like, comparing this 21-year-old to like a Dom, or sure, like there's a huge difference. But like, have you ever thought about like, are there really truly evil people in this world?
Well, I mean, are you talking about the concepts of good and evil in a spiritual sense or in a humanistic sense?
Let's say humanistic sense.
Okay. I think that there's some people that can be evil from a humanistic standpoint, and the reason why I say that is just because if you look at we'll go back to serial killers. If you look at the majority of prolific serial killers, the majority of them have significant horrific trauma in their childhoods.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, we're talking horrible stuff, right? That creates these personalities and these and gives them the tools, quote unquote tools, to be what they are when they're adults, right? Now, will you say that that's evil? I mean, that's questionable, right? Because there's prolific trauma that created that, just like there's trauma that creates alcoholics and drug addicts, and trauma creates PTSD and high levels of anxiety and stuff like that. There's trauma that creates that type of personality or that type of individual. So in those cases, you can kind of argue, I guess. I mean, I don't know if I would make that argument or not, but one could argue and say like, well, I mean, they're not really inherently evil. They were a product of what they experienced. Yeah. Now, there are a handful of serial killers that you look at, and even their own parents are like, how the fuck did they do that? Like, they grew up like they never killed an animal. They never exhibited any kind of violent behavior in that way, or interests or anything like that. We didn't beat them. They had no trauma that we know. They weren't abused. They weren't neglected. Middle America, white picket fence, 2.5 kids, kind of upbringing. And yet they're, the second Charles Manson or whatever, and it's just kind of like, then you get to that point where you're like, well, then what caused that? Like, is it like a physiological defect, or is it like humanistic evil?
Yeah.
But then from a spiritual sense, then you can say like, if you're inclined on the spiritual side, then that would offer up an explanation to say, there's a spiritual evil that took that person down that path or something like that. But I mean, it's with those instances, it's just so hard to pinpoint what it is,
Right.
So you just have to kind of chalk it up to they're probably there's some evil in there.
Yeah.
There's like levels to it. It sounds like it, even the word evil, it almost comes with this like moral sort of paradigm, right? It's like evil just feels like it's a term coined, right, to like explain something that's maybe not good or good-hearted, well-intended. But it's cool talking about this in the sense of like, well, there's another way to look at behavior when it's harmful.
Yeah.
Right. It's like there's that mental health aspect of it.
Yep.
Yeah. I can think it's probably the light's been shined on so much more since I've had a kid, and I've always wanted to believe like ultimately people are good. There's just something that must have transpired that like changed that. But like, I don't know, the scope has changed so much for me as, now there's somebody that I feel this need to protect and like overprotect or whatever it is. So it was just like, I was like fascinated with you just bringing that up right now and talking about that. I don't know how to like segue into the next conversation.
I think it'd be kind of cool to talk a little bit about your research that you did. It kind of talks about this, doesn't it? Yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, you know,
Go
like,
ahead.
hey, speaking of evil, hey, let's talk about your personal therapy. Like, that's a great
Yes,
segue,
dude.
right?
He nailed it, dude.
Yeah, there you
Man,
go.
he cleaned it up so
Hey
good.
guys, I'm
Yeah.
not evil, I promise. Okay.
Let's talk about the things you found out about yourself in therapy.
I put it on a silver platter. For
No,
you.
damn it, dude. I'm such a rookie with this right now, man. So
No.
The things you're making him nervous. I've never seen him this way.
this is
Steven.
good. He transitioned so well. But we can
No,
talk.
What do you want to do? The
It don't matter to me.
research stuff or the?
We can go. Let's.
You're called Jesse O.
Oh my gosh, this is like live and everything. So if you want to do the research, and then let's go
Yeah.
into that. I want to hear about
Okay.
your own personal experience. But if you want to talk a little bit about that, and then I can find my own way to segue into it my own way, okay? Because
Okay.
it's our podcast.
All
But
right.
no,
Sorry.
but,
Took over.
But yeah, but go ahead. If you
Feeling
was there
threatened.
anything, you want to talk about that?
I want
with
my
the-
name on the title of the podcast after that segue.
You got it, man.
We're just gonna like edit it out. He's gonna be here. Jesse's gonna be right there.
Just have it handwritten, Steven over the Jesse.
I like that.
Okay, no.
NWO status, dude, right there.
Oh, dude, it's spray.
Yeah,
oh my God,
dude.
All right. Sorry, imagination's running wild right now.
I love it.
It's all good.
So research-wise, like, you know, I came across. I've always been a big comic book fan, huge
Yeah.
comic nerd since I was a kid. Like I was telling you, when I was like not paying attention, I was reading Spider-Man.
Right.
Like absolutely love Spider-Man, X-Men, Batman has like been since I was like 6-7 years old, my favorite hero. I like Superman, you know, but never really my cup of tea. You know, I had a fascination with that character when I was a kid for a little bit, and then I saw Batman, and I was like, yeah, that's him. He's cool. He's better. But that ended up leading into some of the research that I did regarding the psychological makeup of these characters. Like as I got older, I wrote a lot of papers on research papers in undergrad and grad school regarding these characters. Because once again, the fascination that I had with serial killers, also the fascination I had with the psychological makeup of these fictional characters. Speaking of serial killers, The Punisher, right?
Yeah.
You know, and like
Frank
undergrad,
Castle,
I wrote a paper about. This was more of a sociological side of things, but like from a societal standpoint, like how would we really react to a Punisher, like a real life Punisher, like somebody that got like the mob family killed their family.
Yeah.
And then they didn't get the justice that they felt they needed for their family, and so they went out and got it themselves. So how would we? I wrote a paper on, you know, how would we? And that was a criminology class that I took. So it was like, how would we react to that as a society?
Yeah.
You know, I think now it's even more prevalent because there's probably going to be like 90% of people that are going to be like, man, I'd support him. You know, and
Yeah.
10% would be like, hey, that's still horrible. He killed like 79 humans, you know.
Yeah.
And I know he did it because he was mad because his family got killed. But I mean, that's like 79 humans, you know.
And it's
like,
so twisted that like the killers, the people who killed his family, they're tied to like the government too, right?
well,
Like,
yeah. And
Yeah.
when as time progressed, like the simple explanation when he first came out was his family was caught in a crossfire between two warring families, and they were at a park. And then it evolved into like different writers took it in down different paths, and it like the most recent incarnation is the show I think on Netflix.
Yeah.
John
Yeah.
Bernthal,
John
Bernthal,
did
yeah.
amazing on it, right?
Yes,
But like
he did.
that background is where it's a little bit convoluted and twisted, where like his own government, his own people kind of
Right.
had an act in that, a hand in that, you know. So
so let's talk about conspiracy theories next.
but yeah, so that, you know, I did that with the Punisher. I wrote a paper like in grad school on Batman, and kind of discussed like what how Sigmund Freud would have treated Bruce Wayne, like if
Yeah.
Bruce Wayne came into the office, you know.
Wow.
And so I broke that all down, and I'm 40, so forgive me if I don't remember every
It's all
piece
good.
of it,
It's all good. Yeah.
But you know, there was some stuff there like where it was explaining certain defense mechanisms that Bruce has, you know, explaining the Batman persona, you know, all that stuff. Just, you know, trying to Bruce's struggle trying to be functional after that horrible trauma that he had, you know, with his parents being murdered in front of him, you know. So like just like his struggle with trying to make the world feel normal, you know, after that, you know. And so it was really interesting because in that research paper segued into an article that I wrote for a freelance article I wrote when I used to write back in the day for a website. and it was pretty well received. So I was like kind of happy about that, because here I was like, you know, thinking like, hey, I'm gonna be at this, like, you know, this nerdy guy doing this stuff, and then everybody was like, hey, do more. So that it expanded into like where I broke down like Wolverine, I broke down some of the X-Men, I broke down Spider-Man. I mean, a lot of these heroes have significant trauma that brings them out. I mean, look at we all know about Batman, but look at Superman. Superman lost his parents to a natural disaster, right? Then he came to another planet, didn't know anybody, he was a baby. Then he had to be raised having these powers by these parents that he thought were his parents, but then like afterwards he was like, oh no, they're not, I'm an alien, I'm this, I'm that. So he had to struggle with all that. I mean, the dude has a fortress of solitude. So you know that if you have a fortress of solitude like that, that's like in Antarctica in the ice, like you gotta have some prolific issues to have that type of alone time. You know, like I'm gonna go to my fortress of solitude, and it's not like I'm gonna go to my room, it's like I'm gonna go to Antarctica where only I can get there because I can fly. You know, like and you know, like, so he has that stuff. Spider-Man lost his parents in a plane crash. Then you know, then his Uncle Ben got shot by the person that he could have stopped, but he didn't. Chose not to. You know, I mean, Gwen Stacy he's the one that I don't want to say killed her, but I mean, like, she died when he tried to save her from his girlfriend from falling. You know, all that stuff, you know, I mean, it's a horrific trauma in his life. I mean, it's kind of like among comic fandom, like people kind of think like, man, Peter, how much more can you withstand, dude? Like, you're getting bombed on, you know? I mean, but it's like tons of different characters that experience stuff like that. That a lot of people don't know are applicable to, or you can make applicable to real life with the stuff that humans struggle with, you know. And so when I worked with foster youth for like 5 or 6 years, and dude, I killed it with them using heroes. Like the kids like loved it. Like they didn't know any, like I broke down, like I remember one kid was like using his own fortress of solitude, you know, and I told him, you know, he felt bad about it, guilty about it, and I told him, you know who does that? And he was like, who? And I was like, Superman does that. He has a room in ice that he goes to, you know, and then he didn't feel as guilty about it, you know. Or like other people that, you know, of course I can't be using like, hey, you know who did that? The Punisher, to like an 8-year-old, you know. But
watch that, tell me what you thought.
You know who made it through and they're kind of functional? Frank Castle, you know. That would be terrible, right? But I did use some other heroes that were like, you know, like Spider-Man, for instance, you know, like we're talking about so much trauma, but he still has like this moral code that he doesn't, like, he wants to keep fighting for it, you know.
I think that's super cool. Just using the story of a superhero, something a kid can connect with, and helping them feel okay with like identifying their own needs and self-soothing or giving themselves the coping mechanism, whatever that is, and being okay with that. Yeah, I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
I totally just want to nerd out and talk about superheroes the like entire time.
I know. But I was gonna ask you, Batman, like getting into him again. Forgive me, I'm not as much informed on Batman's life. I feel nervous right now.
Hey, look, let me ask you this. I'm gonna ask him this question eventually, but like, who's your Batman?
What do you mean?
Like, there's a lot of movies and shows. Like, who's your Batman?
The recent one that came out.
I know you're a big Twilight fan, so that's why Robert Pattinson is why, right?
No, not Twilight. Hunger Games. No, no. Yeah.
No, Robert Pattinson played Batman.
The last one?
Yeah. So that one, or do you mean Christian
Dark
Bale?
Knight.
Okay, you mean Christian Bale, like
Knight,
Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I want to know about like. Go ahead.
No, I just want to ask him, who's your Batman? I know there's probably. Actually, I'm curious. I'm going to guess there's probably like 3 right now for you that are like, there's a top 3 I might be able to guess, but what do you got?
You know, I'm going to be honest, and I'm probably going to get some flack for this.
Bro, you're doing it, aren't you?
It's George Clooney. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just playing. I love Batman and Robin. You know? I think that the only actor to really kill both roles, because it's a dual role, right?
Yeah.
It's Bruce Wayne and Batman. They're separate personalities.
Yeah.
I think the only actor to really kill both roles was Ben Affleck.
Yeah,
because he had the anger and the viciousness and the brutality when he was Batman, and the stoicism down, but then he also had that like boyish charm as Bruce Wayne, but you also looked into his eyes and knew that he could whoop your ass. Damn. And that was like perfect, because it was like, he's not a joke, he's not just some billionaire playboy. Like he just walked around like he knew like I could punch your face in right now if I wanted to, and but he had that charm though too, like look at some of the, like, this is gonna get really body language stuff and psychology wise, but if you watch some of the stuff that he does, like he has these little smirks that when people are talking shit to him, where he just looks and he's like a side smirk, like, oh fuck, man, if I had my cowl on right now, but he's all like, go ahead, I'll let you have this, because he knows he's like the alpha, in the room. And he even did, what's funny is that he even did that with Clark Kent. And Clark Kent, of course, alpha as well. So they're going head to head when they first meet, and I mean, it's like he said, like, Bruce Wayne told Clark Kent about Metropolis, like, this was Batman versus Superman. Right. Yeah. And he was like, he said something about, I guess your city has a history of freaks with capes, and then like Clark Kent said something to him about clowns, the Joker. And then like when he said that, of course it touched a nerve, and then Bruce just looked at him and had that little smirk on his face, like, ooh. And he didn't know he was Superman, so he was like probably thinking, I'll slap the shit out of you, but then my whole arm will explode if I did, So, but like, it's I think that's why he did good with it. He did well with both roles. Yeah. Now, my heart belongs to Michael Keaton. Okay. But Michael Keaton played Bruce Wayne, and Michael Keaton played Bruce Wayne a little nuts. You want to get nuts, let's get nuts kind of thing, So he, he wasn't really like, he was kind of aloof and not the playboy that Bruce Wayne needs to put on, So.
Yeah.
That's good, man. I have to go back. Like, I feel like some reason with the Ben Affleck playing Batman, there was like not enough of it though, I guess, maybe to make that like to really, I think it's probably just because he only did like a few movies, and I know he was Justice League and things like that, so but that I actually didn't think that was going to be his answer. That's pretty good.
What about you, dog?
I mean, I guess I would probably, my shit is not that deep of an answer. I'm just like, I like Christian Bale. Where does Christian Bale rate for you on like when it comes to Batman? Where did he miss the mark maybe in comparison to like Ben Affleck? You got something, I know you do.
He's probably number 3, so it's Affleck, Keaton, and it's very close second for Keaton. I mean, like it's like very close, but like Bale would probably be the third one. Yeah. And the reason why he's not number one is it's like, dude, the Bat voice, dude. Oh, come on!
Can you do it? Can you just do it? Just
watch it. Where's the trigger? I mean,
where is it?
Yeah, it's like you never give it to an ordinary citizen.
I'm Batman.
See, right?
That's all I got.
That's what, but even if he says that, those two words don't even have any S's in there. But he has a lisp when he says it. Like that's like, what
sounds like Spaniard.
Yeah.
Hey, Barcelona. I'm from Barcelona.
Like, yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like that's what distracted me with him. I think he was a good Batman though. Okay. If you notice, his voice changed, right? So in Batman Begins, the very first movie, his voice was perfect, and then in Dark Knight, he just got this like different voice that you couldn't even understand what he was saying. Yeah. And so the Batman Begins voice was perfect. When he was like, that guy was hanging from the cord and he was like, I swear to God. And he's like, swear to me. That was perfect. Because I was like, cool. Dude, that's awesome. Yeah. That's scary. Like, that's scary Batman, right? But then he just went into this thing where I was thinking, like, the criminals don't even know what he's saying,
That's crazy.
I think
they're so nuanced with this.
I think I love the Nolan movies so much too. That's probably why I have it such a high regard as well.
Bale did go with Bruce Wayne's playboy side. Yeah. But Bale was kind of, as Bruce Wayne, Bale was kind of like one-dimensional to me. Okay. Like I didn't like when he was Batman. He was more. There was more depth there, and I think with Bruce Wayne, he did well like in certain aspects of it, but I didn't get that same feeling where like he like was a tortured kind of individual. Yeah. Like when Ben Affleck played Bruce Wayne, you could kind of get a sense that like something's up with this guy. Like he has it together, but like there's also something up with him. Like his eyes, the way he played it. But Bruce Wayne was just like, hey, I'm gonna be Bale was Bruce Wayne. He's like, I'm gonna be a billionaire playboy, buy this hotel, badass, and then when I'm Batman, I'm going to be something completely different. And that's cool, but like it just, I don't know, it just didn't hit that mark for me. So
for you as a kid, you said that was probably the character you were drawn to the most, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why, as a kid, why Batman? Why did you gravitate to it more than anybody else? I know you mentioned like X-Men as well.
Yeah,
but like, what was it about him?
I think it was the parental aspect, that not having his parents.
Yeah.
And of course, like, my parents didn't get murdered in the street in front of me, thankfully, but like I was telling you earlier about, my dad being in and out when I was younger and stuff like that. My parents separated, and at the same time, or the same age that they ended up separating, was the same age that Bruce Wayne saw his parents get killed.
Yeah.
And so for some reason it resonated with me,
yeah.
like, so it was like he was like 8 years old. I was like getting ready to be 9 or something like that. Yeah. So it was kind of like, okay, like this guy's got problems. Like, that's he's great. And so then, and of course Batman the Animated Series came out at that moment too. So like it was like, that was like amazing, because it made the mythos and the psychology of him like easily digestible for a kid,
right? Yeah.
But it was still powerful,
Yeah.
So then you were like, wow, dude, like this was cool. Like he's pushing through some stuff,
Yeah.
He had some breakdowns. He had some stuff that bothered him. He had failed relationships. He wasn't playing nice with others.
Right.
All this different stuff. And I was like, that guy's still being Batman though. You know, so he can still be a hero despite all that. So
I love how deep like you get with every answer. You could be like, "What about like the cape?" You'd be like, "Oh, dude, the cape started with." And I'm like, "Damn, it's awesome."
I could really talk about the cape. To be honest with you,
You could, dude.
I have a question about Batman though.
Okay.
Because I'm not, I feel like I'm in a freaking AP class right now, and I didn't take the, the
you better pass
introduction
the exam,
course.
bro. You better pass
I know.
the exam, dude.
This guy's dark though, right? Like Batman is like, I mean, is he? I would, again, I don't have all the superhero.
You mean like he
knowledge.
like listens to Depeche Mode and like what are you talking about? Like,
yeah,
you mean like he's like the best goth ever? Like, is that what you mean? Like,
isn't he kind of bad though? Like, isn't he like? Does he have a little bad side in him?
One of Batman's moral compass is like
boy?
he doesn't want to kill people. Well, or you mean like, he's one thing he doesn't believe in like killing people.
I just want to clarify this. I don't want to, create a judgment on him that's not, like I said, Batman. I mean, Superman. Like I grew up with Superman. Superman is a good guy. Like he doesn't like have a like. I don't think he's dark, right? Like
he's got so much suppressed shit though.
Yeah, but he's like
yeah.
Like look at his normal his person. He's Clark Kent. He's an insecure guy.
He's got the Colgate bright.
He got some anxiety.
Smile,
he's got some anxiety, right? Like he wants
Boy
to be
Scout
accepted.
kinda.
Yeah. He's like the hero, right? Like the good boy. Batman's like kind of darker. Like I feel like like isn't he like like a little more troubled or?
Yeah.
Like I got the sense I may be wrong, but I got the sense from Dark Knight that like it just, and that was probably the very first time I dove into Batman, that like, yeah, he was almost like, he's a little like darker, like has a part of him where he's like, I could fuck shit up if I really wanted to. Like,
yeah.
Would you guys say that? Am I accurate in that analysis or?
Yeah. I mean, he's a I sometimes I hesitate to call him a hero. He does heroic things.
Okay.
But I hesitate because there's even instances like in the books where he's mentioned that he even feels like he's not a good person. Like there's a famous quote that he has when like he's talking about Superman, and he said that Clark, anytime he wanted to, Clark could squash me like a bug. And then he was like, but he doesn't because he's a good person. And he goes, and I'm not.
Do you think he's not a good person?
I think he's a dick. I'm gonna be honest with you, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he's got problematic, relational patterns, because of his trauma, the way he treats people. Yeah. I mean, people will be talking to him and then they look and he just leaves, like he just doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
Like he says what he has to say and he's like, okay, time wasted, I'm gone. Not listening to you, and he's so hard. He's like a driver, dude, like with his teammates, I mean, Justice League wise, like he had files on all of them, how to take them down and neutralize them if they ever became a threat, and he'd even tell them that. Like he kept it all secret,
Yeah.
and it only came out because one of his villains like broke into the Batcave computer and like downloaded all those files, and they tried to neutralize the Justice League. And so they were all like, how the hell do they know all this stuff? And then Batman's like, those are my files.
Dang.
Like, sorry. Like, and then they wanted to kick him out of the Justice League. And then he was like, if you guys don't see, this was a famous line too. He was like, if you guys don't see a problem with an out of control Justice League, he's like, then I don't need to be in this team anymore. You don't need to kick me out. I'll leave.
Damn.
Then he leaves, you know. I mean, he's a jerk, dude, you know.
I kind of sound like Bruce Wayne because I have like files on all my friends and how to fuck them up and how to like get
I
them.
straight up was like, no way. Tell me a little bit more about this guy.
Let's talk about that, man. Yeah, bro. Like, what's up? Why do you feel the need to do that, man? Like,
Speaking of somebody who has like probably should have gone to therapy, like, do you want to talk about your own personal experiences with therapy?
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we like to like, talk about like the first time, like, because there's a lot of stigma out there, and so a part of us is wanting to reach people who don't even know what the hell therapy's like.
Just to add to that too, the part of the show was kind of to open the door to what therapy is, what therapists represent, and maybe see us in a way too that like we are just like them. We also seek help, but yeah, what for you? What if you wouldn't mind talking about your own personal experiences there?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll give you a little experience that was like more on the negative side, and I'll highlight this just because I tell my clients this, and I want people to know this too, that with therapy, like, you don't have to stick with the first therapist you have, because just like with people in your life, you're not going to hit it off and vibe with your first therapist. You might, but you might not, and it's totally okay if you're like, I'm not going to go see them anymore. Yeah. Like I tell my clients all the time,
you don't know
like,
them shit.
What's up?
You don't owe them
exactly,
shit.
Right? And I tell my clients all the time, like, I want them to feel as comfortable as possible. And sometimes we're not going to hit it off. And I'd want you to at least be baseline comfortable enough to say, like, hey, I think I'm going to go with someone else. And I tell them, like, trust me, my feelings are going to be hurt. I totally understand. And I even tell them, I did the same thing. So my first therapist I went to didn't really vibe with them. Not being judgmental or anything, but the office wasn't really like kept up well, and I kind of felt like, I don't know about this. I don't know about this therapist, And
you want
so
me to meet you in the alley?
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, like I'm all like, what? Like, that's not an office,
Having a Batman flashback all of a sudden.
They were all like Bruce Wayne, LMFT, and I was like, this is a cave, dude. Like, no, no. What's that car? And then he tried to make me Robin, dude. And then I was like, dude, I don't want to fight crime. I need help. So the first experience, I didn't really have a good one. I didn't vibe with the therapist, didn't hit it off. So then I didn't go back, right? But the second therapist, I after that, I went back, and she was awesome. And that was the one that where she used guided hypnotherapy. I don't know shit about that, so please don't ask me anything.
Okay, you got it.
Yeah, I mean,
but you
do you remember?
Books,
did you zone out, or like? Do you remember the one thing experience?
The one thing, when I first spoke with her on the consultation on the phone, she told me, she's like, I do guided hypnotherapy.
What was you like? Were you kind of hesitant, or?
Because like for me, like I'm all like hypnotherapy, hypnosis, like, I'm ashamed to say this, but the first thing that comes to mind is like where I'm all like, is she gonna make me act like a chicken, or something like,
right.
The movie Get Out.
Yeah, no, like the carnival hypnosis kind of stuff. Yeah. That's the mainstream idea that we have. But it was a lot more deeper than that. And when she was explaining it to me, I was like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. So I went in there, and what she did is that the one session was like guided hypnotherapy, and then the next session was just like regular psychotherapy, like talk therapy, and then the next session was guided, and all that. So she broke it up. But what it was is that it's not like I'm sitting there like just in a trance or anything like that. And she's like saying like, go get that guy's wallet, or something like that, she's not a Batman.
Why are we playing Twister?
Yeah, I know. I wake up and I'm all like, what the hell? But yeah, so it's a deeply relaxed state. And the way she guides you through that stuff is that she guided me through like it's like the best way I could describe it is that there's like different levels that she guides you through of your consciousness and your personality. And then she continues to do that like session after session. And you get to the point where you get to the deepest level, which is where you hide all your shit. And she guides you through that to that point. And then she you know, I remember she was telling me like, open up a box. You know, there's a box on this table in there, you know, in this room, and it's the deepest room, you know, and she's like, open that box up. What do you see in there? And she was like, you don't have to answer the question. Just think about what you see in there. And so I thought about it, you know, and I, you know, of course that opens up the door for me to think about whatever shit I have, you know, that I saw in the box. Yeah. And then she's like, take it out. Whatever you see, take it out. She's like, look at it, examine it, explore it.
Were you emotionally there? Like
I was, I was really there, dude. Like mentally, and I was really like, I was floating in this room, dude, looking at this stuff in a box.
Damn.
And I was looking at what I chose, you know. And then she was like, okay. She's like, it's time to put that back in the box and close the box and don't worry about it anymore. She was like, you can't take it where you're going. You know, and then she brought me up level by level again out until, and then she was like, okay. She's like, when you hear me snap my fingers, she's like, open your eyes. And so then she snapped her fingers, and then you open your eyes, dude. And I shit you not, I let go of so much anger and resentment in that like 10-week period of time, that stuff that I was holding on to, that, because I, you know, honestly, anger issues based off of what I grew up with, you know. And so, I let go of so much of that, dude. Yeah. And like, it's like stuff that ways that I would react before are like so much less frequent now. Like, it's like, I'm not like, you know, it's not like jokingly I would say this, but tell my friends this, but like, it would be also kind of like half true or maybe 80% true that I would just walk around angry. Like, it wouldn't be no reason, like just anger stewing, you know. And then like after that, it's just like I'm more at peace on a daily kind of in my daily routine. I mean, I would be mad if like I dropped a piece of bread that I was trying to get to make toast, you know, and like it would just be like, you know, like I'm like back to comic books, like Batman level mad, you know, like where I'm beating the Joker, you know, like because I dropped my bread, you know, like stuff like that, you know, like where I was like, oh, you know, and I'd be so hard on myself, but she just like helped me to just release that and let that go.
Wow. Feel free to not answer this if you don't feel comfortable. What were you angry about? What, I don't know if there was like one thing or like what do you kind of attribute some of that anger about?
A lot of it had to do with my dad, with growing up with my dad, and releasing all of that really improved our relationship as well. Because you know, of course, he's been sober for a long time.
Yeah, you said that.
But by the time he sobered up, I was 10 or 11 years old, almost 11, and I already grew up, dude. I was already like 20 when I was 10, you know. So like I you know, and I don't mean this in a bad way or a spiteful way, but I didn't really need a dad anymore after that. Like I was like, I got it, I'm fine. Yeah. And so that's where we had that distance, you know. So no matter how hard he tried, there was still a distance there. And until that point where I was able to let that stuff go, and I still fought to like be around him, you know, like I still wanted to, like I wasn't just like saying like, no, I can't talk to you, or no, you know, it just wasn't the same. But then once I had those sessions, like I released all that, let that go, like our relationship improved, you know. And so we still have our ups and downs where like it's hard for us to talk sometimes just because we didn't have that built when I was younger, you know. But we talk a lot more now. We actually hang out a lot more now. It's not just like me hanging out with like, or talking to my mom and dad. It's just like sometimes it's just me and my dad. That's cool. You know, stuff like that, you know. So it really helped with that, man. So Betty Murphy, LMFT. Wow. That was the guided
Shout
therapist.
Out to her, right?
Yes, definitely. Shit. Helped me out big time, dude. So after that, man, like I was just super chill. You know, I think it coincided with me just actually maturing too. Yeah, that's cool. You know, so. Do
you have were you like a therapist already when you were going to see this therapist or no?
I was actually going through, I mean, technically, I think I was going, because I was, it was part of the practicum.
Yeah, that's
so the personal.
Is that the only reason why you went?
Initially.
Yeah.
But then I kept going after my they had to get like 10 hours of personal therapy. Yeah. And I just wanted to blow through that, you know. But
Same with me. I had to go. Mm-hmm. I was never like completely against it, but I just wasn't going to make my way into the office. Mm-hmm. Had to go, and then I just kept going after that.
But the good thing though is that like I sought out therapy before I was in my grad program. So that was the first therapist that I didn't really hit it off with. And then after that, I was just kind of like, fuck it. I'm just going to deal with it myself.
What were some like preconceived notions about therapy before you stepped into the office? Like, I don't know, did you have any resistance to it at all?
No, not at all. It's funny because normally I'm a pretty reserved person, like as far as like my feelings, you know.
Yeah.
Like I think a lot of men are like that, you know. Like we're just not going around like this made me cry, you know.
Yeah.
We're just like I don't even cry ever, you know. And then you go cry afterwards.
I'm not crying. You're crying.
Yeah, you go crying about lying to somebody about not crying, you know. But I think just being men, we do that, you know. But I didn't have any preconceived notions going in though, dude. Like I was just kind of like you know, I'm kind of fucked up, dude. I need to talk to somebody. Yeah. So I went into it, you know, like, hey, like I'm opening up here, you know, but I just didn't hit it off with that therapist, you know. But so there's nothing against that therapist, you know, or nothing like that. But yeah, so it just was kind of like I didn't have any like resistance or I mean, I'm sure maybe like the second therapist that when I would be in talk therapy, I'm sure maybe there was some subconscious resistance there, like blocks that I built up over time, you know.
After your experience with the first therapist?
The second therapist, when we would have our talk therapy sessions in between the hypnotherapy ones, I'm sure that there was still some subconscious blocks that I developed even from when I was a kid. Okay. You know, when I was a kid, I would pick up my bags and go if somebody, like right away, if somebody didn't like me or didn't want to hang out with me. But it was like, I would be like, okay, bye. You know, see ya, cut you off later. You know, and then I'd put those blocks up, like never doing that again, stupid, you know, and stuff like that, you know. And then those blocks became walls when I was older, you know, when I aged, you know. So I'm sure there's still some stuff in there that I wasn't consciously like doing. I still kind of have those sometimes, those walls, you know, where I'm able to cut people off fairly quickly. But then I challenge myself now, thanks to CBT. And me knowing it, I'm all like,
do you think did your parents or family members ever talk about therapy? Because I'm thinking about like my experience with therapy, and I never, like my family never talked about it. We never brought it up or anything like that. It just wasn't part of our culture, and so I never even realized that was a resource for me to use. It's like I knew there was therapists, but for some reason I never connected. Like, oh, I could see a therapist. Yeah. And that's probably why I would have never walked into the door if I wasn't pushed in by my program. But I don't know, did you have a similar experience with that, or did people talk about it as a resource, or how do you, or was it just like, were you enough pain that you were like, I need to go talk to somebody?
You know, my family never really talked about it. You know, I think that there are a lot of different cultures that have that type of varying amounts of resistance to therapy, you know. Yeah. So like, you know, the majority of my family that I grew up in a Mexican family. So of course, like, it's just like not really talked about, you know. Sometimes even some of the people that did go didn't say anything about it, you know. Like they were just like, I'm not gonna tell you, you know, I'm not gonna say nothing. I gotta keep it on the low, you know.
You're worried about this, you should be grateful. Get to work. You know, no, exactly. You gotta work so you don't you don't overthink.
I feel sad. Hey, go over there and work, you know, and you're like, I'm 9. Like, what? Like,
that'll make you stop feeling sad.
I don't even get paid for this. Like, what's going on? You know? But yeah, dude. So not really, man. I didn't have any like familial influence to say like, you know, like, yeah, you should really go talk to somebody. Yeah. I honestly, I can't even remember or think of anybody that really said that to me. I think it was just kind of a motivation of my own, like you're saying, just because like it was like, hey man, I got some stuff I need to work on. I need to, like, you know, I don't know why I'm so mad all the time, or why I'm so like, why I feel like this, you know, every once in a while or whatever, you know. So I needed to work on some stuff. But of course, you know, we all at some point as humans look and understand how some dysfunctional stuff that happened in our lives in the past influence how we deal with things now. So on some level, even on a human level, you have some basic understanding that like, hey, this happened, or hey, I didn't have this type of childhood, or hey, I didn't have my parents around, all right, I was going through this at that time, and now maybe that's why I'm so angry, or maybe that's why I'm so sad all the time.
I don't know. I want to challenge that because I think you are pretty insightful, and like I think it sounds like you've had that trait in you. Like even just talking back to the like seeing different murderers and being curious about their motivations. You know, I guess, I feel like I think it's a strength of yours because I think you have this ability to analyze yourself, right, and like understand like, why am I feeling this way? I think a lot of people kind of are more reactive, right, to what's happening, and sometimes we build a
You can see
story
that.
up about, shit always happens to me, or like,
Yeah.
and we don't even realize we're creating a narrative that way. I don't know, but
Yeah, no, I could see that.
yeah,
I think that's probably more accurate, as far as like, yeah, now that you're mentioning it, yeah, because I have clients that I'll work with, and, I'm sure you guys have had them too, where like, they come in and like the writing's on the wall for you as a clinician,
Yeah.
like, oh God, this is why this is happening, dude.
Yeah.
But, but then like they're, I it's just like they have a mental block, or they're like oblivious to the fact, and not because they're not intelligent, but it's just like we sometimes, I get it now, because like we sometimes don't smell our own shit,
Yeah, exactly.
and
yeah.
so for a variety of reasons, right?
Yeah.
So, and even if we do, like you were mentioning, like I can kind of self-analyze myself,
Yeah.
but I can't do shit about it. Like, I know, like I'm like, I know this is why this happens and why I feel like this sometimes. But then I'm like, but then what do I do?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not doing nothing.
Right.
I'm not doing nothing. I'm not going to, no, that's
Yeah.
stupid. I'm not doing that. And then later on, I'm like, let me go pay someone else to tell me to do that. you
Yeah,
know?
exactly.
And then it clicks, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, you were right,
Yeah.
but it's not something that we're easily able to do on our own,
I love that, man. Yeah. What's up, bro?
No, I was gonna say, Steven, man, I mean, it's just been so great to have you on the show, man. It's just so layered, and so many things you shared today. Is there anything you'd like to plug before we let you go today? Like Instagram, practice. If not, like I said, it's all good.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me first, dude.
man.
So
Yeah.
I was kind of stoked when you guys hit me up and
Cool, man.
told me I could have free reign with talking about Batman and comics. So I was like, yeah, shit.
I threw you a text. I was
day,
like,
dude.
dude, because I remember, so it was many years ago, but I think I was like at Barnes and Noble, and I saw like a psychology of Batman, and for some reason I was like, Steven's gonna know like the front and back of this, not this book
I
so
think
much.
I actually have that book.
Do you? Nice.
Was it one of those big books?
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
I actually have that
Yeah.
book somewhere, dude. But
We got to have him back, dude. Like,
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Dude. So,
yeah, we're going to have you a part of the third on the show.
yeah. Yeah.
that'd be cool, man.
Yeah, we
No,
got to
I'd-
talk
I'd
about
love
this
to be
cape
back.
thing. I don't know. You got to analyze the cape,
Well,
dude.
that gets a little bit more technical. There's no clinical stuff to that. But we could talk about that for sure, dude. But
Cool, man.
as far as plugging stuff goes, nah, man. It's just I'm on. I have my therapy account on IG. It's you're probably gonna laugh at this. It's the Vigilante Therapist.
Yeah.
So I got that name from me operating a little bit outside of the orthodox approach of therapy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So if
It's
anyone
very
wants to follow me,
Batman-y right there.
yeah,
for
for
sure,
sure.
of
Yeah. So
course,
if anybody wants to follow me on that, they can. And then just my practice, man, Kintsugi Family Counseling Group in Southern California. We provide services and care and treatment for people in Southern California, man, from Victorville to San Diego to El Cajon
Yeah.
to wherever, dude. So LA,
Yeah.
everywhere.
Cool.
Play the California love song as we like.
That's cool, man. Do it. Let's do it. Yep.
Thanks,
I'm
dude.
down.
Appreciate
I
it.
appreciate you
Good
guys, man.
having
Thank
you,
you
man.
for having
Cool.
me, man.